For me, there's a huge amount of that self-learning that actually it comes down to what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. So I think right at the beginning, there needs to be an expectation setting piece. And actually, I think that can be done amongst the students as much as being set. It can't really be set purely from the outside. And the most powerful sports teams, the teams uphold the culture themselves. It's not set and imposed by a coach. It's something that it's co-created with the coach, if you like, about how do we make the boat go fastest. We've got a really you've got a set amount of time, a limited amount of time, and a really challenging goal, which actually is the same in a learning context. My goodness, so much to learn, and a competitive world out there waiting as well. So so it's how do we maximise what we do? It's so much more fun to be performing well and going fast. It's so much fun to be learning and to be to sort of have that great momentum behind something that you're doing. Yeah. So how do we create that momentum? Well, it's lots of individual acts and decisions that make that up. And I think, I suppose I would ask you, how much time do you spend at the beginning setting this stuff out? What I find in comparing a sports environment and a business environment is that people spend very little time discussing how teams work. They want to discuss what they're doing, but not how they're going to do it, how they're going to work together, that you expect full contribution from everyone, that you want difference of views, that everyone really is going to listen to each other, and all of those things. And again, what I often come in and do is set that stuff up front, your team charter, if you like, the rules of engagement, before you get to discuss the substance of what it is you want to do. And when you've then got that sort of the rules of engagement, if you like, then once you start doing the kind of detail, you've got something to come back to, you've got something to hold each other to, you've got a way of working, you've made no assumptions about what to somebody punctuality is important, to somebody else it isn't. All of those things you think through, and you spend some time in that, but that time is so well invested because it gives you the opportunity to have the conversations as things occur as they go along. Are we doing what we set out to do? Are we happy about it? Are we 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10? How do I get to 10 out of 10? It enables that, it facilitates a whole level of conversation about these things, rather than everyone just feeling slightly aggrieved and annoyed and irritated by it all the time, but not really having that conversation out in the open. So, I would sort of encourage you just to have those conversations, to spend real time on that right at the beginning, because that's what facilitates the learning and the habits that come thereafter. And to be clear that when people make choices around what they bring with them to lectures and how they engage, they know kind of what that means for themselves and for others in that environment, and the message that's coming across from that. I think that needs to be explicit and not implicit.
I think that's a very, very good tip, I would say, to make it more explicit for us as well as for them, because if we're not clear, how should they be clear? And we see that quite often. We also work with students who are, or let's say that way, it's a very assessment-driven culture. So, performance, yes, to some degree, but how can I get the 10 out of 10 rather than having sort of checkpoints in between provided. And it's interesting, we sort of seem to now move from this sort of learner provider institution to sort of more learning enablement. But that also requires, from my point of view, to not just measure one point and that's the end. Yes, it's good to get their gold medal, at the Olympics, for instance, and to get to the Olympics in the first place. But what's the journey to get to that? And we quite often in education don't have that understanding yet. We have exam, and you get, this is your mark, this is reflecting what you have done. But actually, it's not that, because if you look at an individual basis, you can do the team performance, but also at an individual level. What's your sense for? Do you think we should assess just the team performance, or do you think there needs to be an individual component as well to that?
I think it's really vital to assess and to measure and to review and to celebrate the way in which people are learning and studying. For me, the results piece is inevitably a very narrow snapshot. It's actually often a test of memory skill, not actually a test of the depth of what you may be learning and capable of. And so I think we have to be really careful about how that then, sets people up to be effective in the real world. There's actually been a massive shift in sports psychology over the last 20 years on this. We talk exclusively about the performance process and separate that out very much from the result. Now, everyone knows we want to win a gold medal, and we're not saying we don't want to win the gold medal, but we spend very little time talking about the gold medal, and we talk about all the things we can do that will make our boat go as fast as possible and give us the best chance of winning that medal when we get to that point. But we're reviewing all the things on a daily basis that we can do in the broadest sense. So not just how we put our oar in the water, although we look at that in infinitesimal detail, but how we behave as athletes on the water, off the water, how we communicate, how we give feedback to each other. All of these aspects, how we look after our nutrition and mindsets during each session. We can't just train harder, so we've got to look at the quality of what we do. And we are ruthless about reviewing this at a very regular basis. And these are, this is a real kind of sense of the stuff that we can control, that all goes into the boat performance. It gives us the best chance of getting that result. But we're really focused, even within a season when we're having races, our coaches will be saying to us, when we're in an international race in the middle of the season, we might win it, he'll say, great result, how did you perform? How did you perform? That's what we're focusing on. It's about how we get our best performance each time. What are the things we can keep learning, whether we've won or not? Because actually, it's only really that end race where probably the result is most important anyway. And we're on this journey to get faster. And even when you get to an Olympics, then you may well go on to another Olympics. So it's all about this process of continuous improvement and the momentum that comes with that. And all of the things that go into, that self-awareness piece, the self-learning at a much deeper level than purely how good is my rowing technique. And I think that is something, again, that I try and work with organisations to shift away from the spreadsheet obsession, because actually the best way to get your spreadsheet figures better is to stop talking about them and to look at how you're working together, how you're working as a team, how you're behaving as a team, your beliefs, your mindset. All of those things are determining those results. So let's look into those.
So again, it's a really good tip for group work, actually, and we quite often struggle with that because they're not in the right mindset, they're not in the right place. Students quite often, focus individually. I want the first. And if you say to them, it's not about that, okay? It's about how you perform as a group on the way, not where you get to the end. That will come automatically if you do X, Y, Z, what we just talked about.
It needs to be backed up, though, by the stuff you're measuring and rewarding. So if you say that but still only really talk about the result at the end, then the message isn't sort of one that's going to be really believed about a shift. It means that there needs to be a celebration of the way people are working, that's recognised and measured in some way, and it's really important that is reflected back in the system. And again, that's what we see as often missing in certainly in the schooling world. And it's really important the university are making that transition into a working world. That people are able to kind of really assess their own performance as they go and become aware of how they're contributing as a team member, and those things are exactly what are critical in the workplace.